Ooh, almost. Hold on. It didn't make the snappy. Ha! Anyways, oh goodness gracious. Anyway, so do hormones make you crazy? So I get that question a lot, like everything else on this channel. It's usually based off of questions that I get over and over from people, whether they're trans and on hormone therapy, or, just a family member wondering, or whatever. They want to know, should I expect my loved one to go crazy or something like that? The short answer is no. Whether you're on testosterone or estrogen, you're not going to go crazy. So, hormone therapy can have its ups and downs, for sure. And you will have moods that are highs and lows, like anybody. If you think back to perhaps your initial puberty, did you have mood swings and things? And are you still alive today? You didn't go and rob a bank or cut somebody's throat or something like that, right? This is similar in principle. It's a little bit more of a controlled environment because we are adding hormones from an external source, so we have control over the dosing and levels and stuff that are achieved. So it's actually perhaps a tad bit better than the initial puberty that one might have gone through, but it still can be a little bit disruptive whenever you're especially if you start your transition a little bit later, so you've forgotten what the first puberty was like, and then you're sitting there and you're like me, you're 40, and you're like, okay, let's do this. And when I think I started puberty maybe around like 12 or so. So 12 was a long time ago for me. And I don't remember everything about it. I remember some stuff, but hey, it would be a big old new experience for me if I decided to go on testosterone and go through all that fun stuff over again, the zits and the moodiness and all that. So anyways, when you're talking about estrogen therapy or testosterone therapy, it really isn't very different in how you're going to be experiencing some highs of your levels and some lows, because since we are controlling your hormone levels externally, also known as giving you exogenous hormones, we're going to give them to you. They're going to have your levels rise and then fall. And depending on what kind of medication you're on, it can determine how fast that happens. For example, pills for estrogen therapy have a typically very short half-life of maybe 6 to 8 hours or so. That doesn't mean that the medication is gone at that point in time, but a great deal of the bulk of it can be. And so you'll see up, and then after 6 to 8 hours, it'll start coming down. And I have people take pills 3 times a day or so, and so that's a lot of up and down during one day. It takes some getting used to. On the other side, if you're getting injections, whether it's estradiol or testosterone, you're usually going to be on a once weekly injection where the half-life of that medication is going to be much longer. It's going to be several days long as opposed to just several hours long. And so you get that gradual up and then gradual down over the course of a week or so, depending on which medicine you're on, because they do have different half-lives and all that, but we're just talking approximations right now. So anyway, whenever you're experiencing that initially, it can cause you to feel a certain way. When the highs are high, usually so are you. And then when the lows are low, so can you be. So what does that look like? Some people will not notice it at all because they're not as sensitive to the rise and fall of their hormone levels, and that's perfectly fine. Actually, that's like the best. Then you don't have to deal with this crap. But whenever we're talking about people who are experiencing that, and it can be intermittent. It doesn't mean that you're all the time experiencing this. It can be intermittent and depend on how much sleep you've gotten and what overall good health you're in, and, tons of other things. So, nobody's going to have 100%, map that follows this exact pattern. Everyone is so different in how they do these hormones. So anyways, I'll get off track. God, I love talking about hormones, and I love playing with my little fan, and now I got it stuck. Shit. Anyways, so with the rise and fall, you may see some elated moods, some, happy moods. You may experience some gender euphoria. And whenever you come down a little bit, you may experience like some mild fatigue or moodiness, grumpiness. That's typically when folks are found to be, oh no, she's got the bitchy, or something like that, whenever we're talking about like the trans femme folks. As far as though this weird myth or belief, I don't really know where it came from that hormone therapy is gonna like throw you off to where you're just crazy pants or something. I think that people just, if you're in a relationship and you're going at each other, whatever, we tend to take things a little bit more exaggeratedly. I don't know if that's not really a word. Anyways, so whenever you're mad at someone, you tend to look for the worst in them and try to poke at it. It's not the best way of dealing with things in your life, just FYI, but hey, whatever. So I do think that people need to know that, hey, if you were a bitch or an asshole or whatever before you got on hormone therapy, guess what? It's not going to make it any better, usually anyway. It could throw a little bit of gasoline on the fire, but it's not going to make someone who was generally like your just mild-mannered person that's hanging out turn into a raging cuntosaurus or something like that. Someone spell me that word. So it's not going to entirely change your personality and emotional state of being. It just kind of can bring things out and to the forefront a little bit more. And once you get used to hormone therapy and everything, these things kind of calm down a bit. This is typically seen, especially during the first few weeks to months of getting on hormone therapy, or anytime there's like a dose change, or if you change methods, such as going from pills to injections or something like that, you may see a resurgence of this. But generally speaking, after the first year or two, you don't really tend to see this kind of exaggerated reaction to hormone therapy. So, just bear with it. You can get through it. Like I said, it's just another puberty. It's just when you're going through it as an adult, it's kind of annoying to have to deal with this stuff that you thought you had put behind you and you're not going to have to deal with anymore. And so you just got to find better coping mechanisms. If you find that, let's say you're on testosterone and you know that like the first day after your shot, you're just kind of like baseline sitting around annoyed with life. Maybe that's not the best day of the week to schedule like a date with somebody. Just saying. So you get to see the patterns in how the hormones are affecting you and everything. And this is definitely something to talk with your provider about, because, there are many different options of how you can take hormone therapy. Some people, like I said, a lot of people, I start them off on, like, if they're on injections, weekly injections, but there are people who like to do like microdosing or something like that, where they give themselves an injection of a very tiny amount, either every other day or maybe just twice a week or something like that. And what that does is decreases how high the peaks are of your hormone levels and how low the lows are of your hormone levels. And so you stay, instead of doing this with your levels, you instead kind of do this. And so you're closer to like the midline here, so you're not having as high of highs and as low of lows. It can be beneficial for some, but like I said, lots of people don't even experience a lot of these things, so it's not really like something that you have to do or look into. It's more, I tell folks, just if you're experiencing it, talk to your provider about it in case they're like, oh yeah, you definitely need to move on to do this, or just so they can give you what your options are. That being said, I want to just reiterate, hormone therapy doesn't make you crazy. It's not an excuse. Watch out. I've had some couples who, the partner was like, yeah, I know, she's just yelling at me because of the hormones. I'm like, I don't know. Did she used to yell? Because she used to yell, all right, then it very well might be, just her. And if she's just yelling a little bit more than usual, it might be the hormones, but if she didn't used to yell and, all of a sudden she is, check yourself and what you're doing, how you're interacting, because sometimes little things can blow up into big. But anyways, and also, let me mention this. Sorry, I know I bounce all over the place, but one of the things to be aware of, and one of the other questions that I get often is folks that have some mental health issues. Is it okay for them to be on hormone therapy? And this is an excellent question. The short answer is yes. It's perfectly fine for them to be on hormone therapy. Usually the most common one that people ask me about is, what if I have bipolar? And this is fine. And for just like, I know this is like a really dumbed down explanation of bipolar, but essentially it's just really extreme highs or really extreme lows, or both, depending on what kind of bipolar you have. But anyway, and so, you know, logically it makes sense that, you know, if you already have those high highs, low lows, throwing that gasoline on the fire may not be the the best thing, right? So so while that is something to take into consideration, let me just say that if your bipolar is pretty well controlled, like you're either medicated or maybe you're not to the point where you needed medication yet, but it's reasonably controlled, meaning you can go about your daily life, your activities of daily living, you know, doing your home stuff and self-care and going to work and or school, and you're accomplishing your tasks. Perhaps you have some stress or difficulties, but you are able to accomplish them. This is perfectly fine. Adding hormones to that can be done relatively easily. A lot of times if someone is very concerned about it, I'll start them on like a reduced dose, something like that, and just kind of see how they feel on it before we advance it a little bit more. Or we may try one of those things like I mentioned before, where instead of maybe weekly injections, we go for the microdosing and do like maybe twice a week, like a half dose twice a week. That way you make the whole week dose there. Anyways, so this is something that definitely needs to be discussed with your provider, but it's not something that should be a total roadblock to your hormone therapy goals. And there are all kinds of other, you know, emotional issues and, you know, having like PTSD and, you know, and all this stuff. Definitely discuss it with your provider, but those are not roadblocks to getting on hormone therapy. It's just something to be aware of so that, you know, if you find that things are getting more exacerbated than what you're comfortable with emotionally, that you can discuss what options and possibilities there are to mitigate these effects. Anyway, so sorry to ramble on here toward the end of the video, but in the end, hormone therapy does not like completely change your entire being and way of thinking and interacting with the world. It just kind of, you know, can bring out those things. So if you're already a mean person, you're still going to probably be a mean person. I mean, you know, whatever. And you might be just a little bit meaner. But if you're a kind person, this is not going to turn you into some raging lunatic or something like that. It may make you a little bit more moody, you know, like, oh, I don't feel like going to the movies tonight. Meh, you know, or whatever. Just something like that. It's nothing like world changing that's going on with this. I think people are either using that often as either like a crutch or an excuse for their behavior and whatnot, or they could be on an inappropriate dose and have crazy levels. And I have seen this both from the DIY crowd and from people who are being prescribed stuff by folks that have absolutely no idea what they're doing with hormone therapy, but hopefully they are meaning well and just trying to help someone get hormone therapy in an area that doesn't typically supply it. So do be aware of that as well, because if your hormone levels are like completely out of whack, yeah, you're gonna be kind of out of whack yourself. And this is why we do labs. So anyway, hormones don't make you crazy. It's perfectly fine if you have some mental health stuff going on to be on hormone therapy. You may want to just kind of pace it a little bit slower and lower than folks who don't have those same issues. But hey, you can still do it. So, alrighty, I'm gonna try this one more time. Hold on. Okay. You know, there it goes. Anyway, I don't know what my deal is. I'm just not fancy enough, I guess, to be able to, you know, and I'm not even trying, and it did it that time. Okay, I'm gonna catch y'all later. Have a blast.